story is my dad was watching the news, and anything medical on TV, he would always, have me come out and look at it. And because at the age of 3, I said I wanted to be a doctor. So they always made sure they fed that dream.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us on the study. Now today, I'm gonna try not to get too excited, but for the first time, I will be talking to a neurosurgeon. And I know a lot of us don't understand what a neurosurgeon is, and I know a lot of us don't believe it's possible to become a surgeon. And that's why I wanted to sit down with this amazing young lady, Dr. Keyne.
Hey, how are you?
I am just trying to compose myself. She allowed me to come and shadow her. And I got to see just kind of what she does. And I also learned that not every day is surgery. That you get to see people who they're coming in to check in on a fall that they had and hit their head. And all ages. That day I shadowed you, what were the ages? It was like a baby up to
70, I think, was the oldest person.
And how old was the baby that came in?
The one baby, I believe, was a few months old or a couple months old.
Yes.
Something like that.
Now, tell me, because you have an acronym, but what does it stand for, your company?
Brain and Spine Institute for Children. So the acronym is B.A.S.I.C.
Now, how long did it take you to come up with that?
I have to be honest. I have to give credit to my PA, Ashley Rogers, at the time. We were just sitting at breakfast one morning, and I said, I want to start my own practice. I want to open my own practice. And she's like, well, you need a name. And I'm like, you're right, I need a name. And so we were going back and forth, and I said, well, I want one with a, kind of catchy acronym and that people can remember. And so she said, B.A.S.I.C, Brain and Spine Institute for Children. And I was like, yeah, that's perfect. Going back to the basics where you have one-on-one care and compassionate, that compassionate, dedicated care that you kind of lose sometimes at the hospital.
That's a lesson too in just adding value.
Yes.
When you met her and you working with her, you didn't think she'll give you the name that would, now it's going to be world renowned. We're going to make sure that. So now, tell the viewers where you're based and what all services you provide in your practice.
So I'm based in Orlando, Florida. Specifically, my office is in Winter Park, Florida. And I provide, as you said, services from actually prenatal. So if a mother has a diagnosis of, their baby may have spina bifida or hydrocephalus in utero, I will actually see the mom prior to the baby being born, and we'll discuss, one is to really get to know them so that they're comfortable with me. And 2, of course, they have a million questions with regard to that diagnosis. And so I educate them as much as possible. And of course, we never know exactly what to expect as far as, when the baby is actually born. But I give them the best knowledge that we have as far as, how the baby may act, how the baby may be, where my role comes in, and what I'm going to be doing to the baby. And then I go all the way up to 102 if they come in with a problem. So I do brain and spine surgery. So with the adult population, I just do spine surgery. So that's cervical, thoracic, lumbar. I also do peripheral nerve surgery as well. With my pediatric population, I do the whole thing, brain and spine.
Now, I want to understand just the journey, because school is daunting.
Yes.
A lot of us struggle with school. Now, how many years of school did you have to do to become who you are today?
So I did 4 years undergrad, so 4 years of college, and then 4 years of medical school. And then I did a 6-year residency, neurosurgery residency. And then to do pediatric neurosurgery, I did a 1-year fellowship. So when you add that all together, that's 15 years.
So now, be real with me here. on this schooling, because this is something that I'm intrigued with as far as, is this something that you were doing just like putting one foot in front of the other, like feeling lost, or was this a goal from a young age?
This is actually a goal from a young age. It actually started at the age of 12. So the story is, my dad was watching the news, and anything medical on TV, he would always, have me come out and look at it. And because at the age of 3, I said I wanted to be a doctor. So they always made sure they fed that dream. And so this one particular day, I think I was in my room probably playing with my Barbies. That's what 12-year-olds did back then, how old I am. He called me out, and I went out, and I'm looking at the TV, and I see this black man getting all these accolades. And I'm from Baltimore, so that's not something that was seen very often. And he's a doctor, and they're talking about how he separated these conjoined twins. So twins that were joined at the head. Siamese twins is what they were calling them. And I looked at my dad and I said, that's easy. Now, I had no idea what that even entailed. I didn't know anything about neurosurgery. And I was like, I can do that. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do pediatric neurosurgery. And my dad said 3 words, you sure can. And that was it. That was all I needed to hear. My dad gave me the go ahead and the affirmation, and you can do it.
Right.
And, after I heard him say it, I didn't care what anyone else said. My dad said I could.
Right.
So.
That is amazing. Now, tell me a little bit more about your dad. Like, where was he from? Race, nationality, where he grew up?
Yeah, so my dad grew up in Maryland as well. Baltimore County, Hereford is where he grew up. And his father was just a hard worker. My grandmother was a cook, and also worked in, domestic worker, worked in the house, taking care of them. He had 4 other siblings. But they were very close family. My dad actually ended up getting drafted into Vietnam, which he didn't talk a lot about, as most Vietnam vets don't. But he did not go to college, was not medical at all. But he was a encourager. He was someone who always saw someone's potential, not just where they were, but where he knew they could get to. He was very giving, very generous, and just very honest. So if my dad said something, it was the truth, and to take it seriously if he was serious. But he also had a great sense of humor as well. And so, sometimes when I look at how I interact with my patients, I see a lot of my dad in what I do.
He sounds more like your grandfather than your father, in the sense of how you describe him. Because a lot of times, fathers, we could be tough, and we could be abrasive. We could rub our kids the wrong way. But the grandfather, a lot of times, is described the way you describe your dad.
Yeah.
So was he much older than you? Like, was he 20 years older or 30 years?
So he was 26 years older than me. Okay. He was 26 when I was born, so he was young.
Yeah.
And when I was born, both my grandfathers were deceased. So I actually never had a grandfather.
Right.
But yeah, and he was still firm with me, but not in the sense that I was ever afraid of him. I always felt very secure and safe in his presence. And I knew that everything was all right if he was there. And so that's why his 3 words meant more to me than anything anyone else could have possibly said. Right. We're together until death did them part. So my father passed away in 2009. But yeah, he was there and went to all my sports events. I have one older brother, and he supported us both. We would, he took us to the baseball fields, softball fields, basketball courts. I mean, that's probably where he was the hardest on us, honestly. Right. But he made sure we never quit. We always gave it our best, but it was more than him just saying, and actually I don't even remember him specifically telling me that. Do your best, give it your all. I saw the example in him because that's what he did, without really finishing high school education, no college education. I watched him really climb the ladder, even professionally, to a place where really no one with his educational background would have gotten to, but he always worked hard and never gave up, and so his work ethic and everything, I mean, he just watching him and seeing him was just the example that my brother and I needed without having to tell us.
Right. And now your mom, tell me about her personality.
Oh, my mom is she's amazing. She has a very strong personality. I will say, you will know what she's thinking and what she's feeling. She will definitely tell you. But she too is a very giving and loving person, and she is, true definition of a caregiver. She really is. And she was the one, I mean, she worked as well. She did go to college, I want to say for a year or 2 years. We're 23 years apart. And family is everything to her. That's just everything to her. And so she always makes sure that her family is well taken care of. But she worked full time while we were growing up, but I don't recall a time where she did not come home and cook. So she would come home every night. We had a home cooked hot meal. Now, I would love to have that now, but I do not appreciate that then. I was like, can we go to McDonald's? Can we go out to eat? And we never did. That was like a treat that happened very infrequently. But now I totally appreciate that. So when she cooks now, I am very appreciative. She worked for Becton Dickinson. And again, so they're a company, actually a medical company, medical supply company. So that was as close to the medical field that I got. I remember she used to work in the lab where they made the agar plates, so the plates that you use to figure out if there's a virus growing or bacteria growing. And then she too worked her way up into corporate. Again, just by working hard, and they're both my parents are brilliant. They're very smart.
Either of them had a college degree.
Correct.
And they worked their way up.
Yes.
And so you were watching their example as much as or more than hearing what they were saying.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like they were doing more doing than talking.
Yes.
So it wasn't like they were every week, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a doctor.
Oh,
hey,
no.
You need to go in there and read that medical book. It wasn't that.
Never.
And you played sports.
3 sports.
And you look like an athlete. So that's I know sports had to give you something. What things do you think you picked up from sports as far as work ethic?
I think one of the biggest things, again, is, wanting to win and not giving up. And having, even when you don't win, to still have that good attitude, because someone's always watching you. Either when I remember playing on varsity, and we had the JV girls watching us, and so if I threw a fit, and threw the ball against the wall or whatever, I realized that the younger girls are looking at me, and to set that example. But it also teaches you about being a team player, and knowing, I remember my coach, and we always hear this, right? There's no I in team. Well, I was a smart aleck, and I'd be like, well, there's a me, and but once I, grew up and matured a little bit, you do realize, and everyone has to help each other in order to really be successful. And so the one thing I always tell my families when they come in is that we're a team, and I have my role, but everyone in this room plays a part. And in order for this to go well and for us to have a good outcome, for us to win this and carry the ball over the finish line, we have to stay a team. And if at any point, there's lack of trust, or, we're not communicating, and that team starts to break apart, then we know that we can't get to where we need to go. And so I always make it a point that we stay that cohesive team, that, we're honest with each other. Any questions or any concerns, I'm accessible, I'm on your team, and we're going to see this through. So, yeah.
Now, what 3 sports?
Volleyball, basketball, and I ran track. I did play softball as middle school up to 9th grade. So actually, I guess 4 sports, but yeah, those were my sports.
Did you choose those sports, or did your dad, introduce you to each?
With softball, I was watching my brother play baseball. So of course it was, the competition thing again, right? He's 2 years older, and I'm like, oh, if he can do it, I can do it. I can do it better. That was one of the things. And then he played basketball. So of course, I got to take him to the hoop. I mean, you just got to prove that I'm better than you. And then with track, that just kind of happened because I wasn't really happy on my softball team. And I remember the track coach, approaching me and like, I think you'd be great, come on out, and so I was like, oh, I'm appreciated. Okay, I'm going to track. And I loved it. Did pretty much all of them. I did the 4x1. I did the disc throwing, shot put, high jump, long jump, triple jump. So wherever they needed me for that meet, yeah. I would do as many as they would allow me to. But usually it was like four events.
Okay. So now when it came time for college, you let the sports go?
Yes.
And where did you graduate? What city did you graduate high school?
So that was, it was Baltimore County.
Baltimore.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one of the things that kind of solidified me not playing sports anymore, I tore my ACL my senior year, and my orthopedic surgeon at the time was not really pro sports for women, and so told me, oh, you'll never play again. And so I just kind of had that in my mind that after high school that was going to be it, and I just do intramurals. So I ended up just getting an academic scholarship.
Tell me about the academic scholarship. Is that a full scholarship? Is it a partial scholarship?
It took care of my tuition and most of my room and board. My parents had to pay just a little bit to cover the rest of my room and board because I was an out-of-state student. So I ended up going to the University of Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania. But it was very minimal. So, essentially it was a full scholarship.
University of Pittsburgh.
Yes.
And is that known as Pitt?
Pitt.
Is it black and yellow or
blue and gold?
Blue and gold.
Blue and gold.
I remember that because I went to college in West Virginia.
Oh yeah.
And I was in Buckhannon, West Virginia, and I think Pitt was like 2 hours away.
Right.
Maybe 2.5.
That was our backyard brawl.
And my friend, they had a friend that played football for Pitt. So I remember going to Pitt to like hang out and being in his dorm room, and would go to parties and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of cool. You went, how far was that from Baltimore?
About 5 hours.
5
drive.
hour drive. Okay.
Yeah.
And what was your major?
In neuroscience and Africana studies. So I double major.
Not major and minor.
Right, double major.
Double major. So 2 degrees?
They both fell under B.A.S.I.C. So
really?
yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So 1 degree?
1 degree.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, see, that tells you how much I know about school. Because I would think you get 2 bachelors, one in, Africana studies, Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Art.
So I just got a Bachelor of Science. Different subjects, 2 different requirements.
How many credits is that at the end?
Oh, I don't even know. I would just kind of mix it up, and so one of the things that kind of prompted me to do that was I wanted to keep my GPA up, and I tell other kids who are coming out of high school and even before, sometimes in middle school, I'm like, okay, this is what you want to do. You want to take those classes that you can get A's in, because that's going to boost your GPA, because in some of the other classes that may relate to your major may be a little bit more difficult, and as you go on they do definitely become more difficult. So if you can balance it out and you get those A's in the other classes, then at the end of the day the only thing people are really going to look at is that GPA. They're not going to dissect each and every class, but of course you want to do well in all of them. But in the event that you don't do as well as you want, you can still keep your GPA up. That was my rationale. Nothing that anyone told me or said to do. I just kind of figured that out on my own.
Right.
Yeah.
What month are you born in?
September.
That is crazy. I'm not into zodiac and stuff, but I asked that because anytime I'm talking or people always ask in the comments, what month or what's their birthday? And I also ask that because my wife, a lot of times, I'm like, where'd you learn that? She's like, oh, I just know it. And I'm like, so you just born with that knowledge? She's a September baby as well. So y'all just come up with this knowledge. Now,
makes sense.
I wanted to understand, you're in neuroscience major.
Yes.
So you can do that in undergrad. I didn't know that was a major. I've heard of biomedical science,
right?
And, these different ones, but neuroscience.
I did neuroscience. That was one of the reasons I picked University of Pittsburgh, because they were one of very few universities at the time that actually had that major. So you're right. Most of the other majors were pre-med, and so it was either more chemistry or biology, but yes, there were no neuroscience majors. The majority of them now have neuroscience majors.
Okay. What were, I would say, the 3 hardest classes you can remember as a neuroscience major?
I would probably say neurophysiology. That was a little challenging. Another hard one. I wasn't huge on physics, so I'd probably say physics.
Okay.
I guess that would be pretty much it as far as the hardest one.
Okay. And you finished in 4 years?
Finished in 4 years.
And now the next step is med school.
Yes.
Now you have to take a MCAT.
Correct.
And then you apply to your med schools.
Right.
How many did you apply to?
I only applied to, I want to say maybe 5.
5?
So not a lot.
Do you remember the 5?
I remember I did Northwestern, I did Maryland, and there were a few more that I can't remember.
Now, you're an undergrad. Tell me, now, were you a party girl or were you very studious? Or did you do both?
Yeah, so I wasn't a party girl at all. I was very much studious, but I was in a lot of different clubs. So I sung in the gospel choir. I was in Ambassadors for Christ. I did a lot of the, we had a Black Action Society, and so I did a lot of stuff with them. I also did research, and this is the funny thing, although I hated neurophysiology, that was the research I did. So I did research in neurophysiology. So I was very, very active, and I had lots of friends, lots of different groups, and but I always made sure I got my studying in, and I have friends till this day that would like, you know, basically tease me or thank me, whichever one, but for dragging them to the library. I'm like, no, I'll go to the union party with you, but we have to go to the library and study first. They look up and it's like 1 a.m. and they're like, you said we were going to go to the party. And I'm like, wasn't this party? And, you know, so yeah, I definitely wasn't a partier.
I know that because you earned it. Like, sometimes I've heard stories of doctors, which a doctor and a neurosurgeon is different to me because it's different. And so it's doctors who may be in the hospital and they were partying and they were living it up and got into med school, you know, by the skin of their teeth. But so I wanted to know if that was the same similar journey, but it sounds like you were locked in, you were focused. Now, where did the boys come into play? What type of guys were after you? Was it the football players, or was it the neuroscience majors, or did you push them away?
Yeah, I pushed a lot of them away because I was very focused. But there were some definitely interested. Yeah.
Did you have a boyfriend in college?
I did.
What year did that come?
It was actually going into my sophomore year.
Okay. The grades dropped.
No.
So you kept the grades?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's something that I'm asking for young ladies who are going to be watching this, about having that focus.
Absolutely.
And prioritizing, knowing those goals and not being sidetracked too much.
Absolutely. And you know, one of the things I always tell people, and this is anyone in any relationship, right? A relationship should cause you to grow and be better and be a better person. If that relationship isn't doing that, then that relationship isn't for you. You know, I think if you find yourself being complacent or you know, backtracking or not doing as well as you should, because really we should lift each other up, right? Iron sharpens iron. And so, you know, if it's just kind of a one way and I'm just taking, and, you know, or you're giving and the other person's taking, then yeah, that's not a healthy relationship. Mm-hmm. So, I will say all of my relationships, I made sure that, okay, this person is helping me to grow, and likewise, I'm helping them to grow. You know, we're helping each other. Yeah, and there's goals. There should always be goals. Like, we should never be like, okay, I've mastered everything. That's not possible, right? There should always be another goal. You meet one, then you should have another. Then you should have another. And I think, you know, that also keeps you going and allows you to be even better. And so that person should encourage that as well.
We'll have to use that clip for a promo reel. That was good. Now, tell me about med school. Where did you go to med school? For me, and also for those watching, you applied to 5. Did you get your number 1, or did you have to settle?
It was actually University of Pittsburgh. So I wanted to stay there because I had already established relationships. I knew the doctors. I knew some of the other medical students that I met studying at their Scaife Hall, which is the medical school, basically kind of library, so to speak. And then I remember the first surgeon that I watched as an undergrad. I watched a kidney transplant. It was Velma Scantleberry, and she was the first, definitely at Pitt, but the first African American female transplant surgeon. So that in and of itself had me hooked. Just, I want to stay here. I want to be able to shadow her and learn from her. And that was actually, I want to say, the first Black female surgeon I had met. And we're talking, at this point, I'm 19, 20 years old. So that made a huge impact on me. And so yeah, that was my first. I wanted to stay at Pitt.
Yes, you got into Pitt.
I got into Pitt.
Wow, okay. And med school is 4 years.
4 years.
And then after that, now as you're going through this, were there challenges? Were there like, got a D, got an F? Or did your focus and drive kind of keep you in, getting A's and B's? Did you get C's?
So I did, in undergrad, I did get 1 C. That was neurophysiology. I took it over. Ended up getting, I think, a B+ or something. But that's why it helped taking those other classes where I got A's in, because I still ended up with a 3.89 or 8 something GPA. One of the challenges that I faced was, so going back to, I kind of talked about how my dad said you sure can. The discouraging thing was that wasn't what I heard from everyone else. So even in high school, I remember meeting with my guidance counselor and telling, I sat in the office just like we're sitting here, and she asked me, okay, what do you want to do? What are your future goals? And I said, I want to be a pediatric neurosurgeon. And she just kind of sits back, looks at me, and she's like, it's really hard. Don't you want a family? Don't you want to get married, have kids? How about nursing? Now, nursing is a great profession. I couldn't do what I do without my nurses. I love them. They're awesome. And if that's what you want to do, that's amazing. But if that's not what you want to do, if someone tells you what their actual goal is and it's not that, it should be encouraged, right, and fed. And so I remember leaving out of there, not feeling discouraged, but telling myself I will never meet with her again. That was it. And I remember we had to meet with the counselor like our senior year one more time, and I refused. And I remember they called my mom, and I was like, oh, she's always going to have my back. It's one of those things. I told you my parents always had my back, especially when they knew I wasn't in the wrong. Now, if I was wrong, of course, but I was like, oh yes, that's great. Call my mom. I want to hear what she has to say. And I remember they got her on the phone, and my mom then told me what she actually said, but all I knew was the principal came out. She said, you can go back to your class now. I said, okay. She was like, you don't have to meet. And then so I get home and I asked my mom, I said, Mom, what did you tell them? And she said, well, why were you, she asked, well, why is she sitting outside the office? And they said, well, she's saying that, when she told what she wanted to do, she was told, no, she can't do it. And so my mom said, then she will not meet with that person who told her no, and you should send her back to her class. And so that was, so even my mom knew, okay, if you're not going to encourage my child, then I don't want her in your presence. And so going on to college, I remember I had my pre-med advisor. And again, I tell her, I want to go to medical school. I want to be a pediatric neurosurgeon. And she says, ooh, you might want to take your MCATs over. And that test was so grueling. I walked out of it saying, I will never take this test again. It was 8 hours of what I felt was torture at the time. And I said, that's not going to happen. I'm going to apply anyway. She literally told me, do not apply. You'll waste your money and you will not get in. And then
for med school?
For med school. That was for med school. Wow. And so then I get into med school. And once I'm in med school, I have another advisor. And this was actually a pediatric neurosurgeon. And he was, I looked at him as being my mentor almost, and he was also, a Christian, and, so I'm knowing that he's going to encourage me and tell me, yes, you'll match in residency and, for neurosurgery. And I remember sitting in his office and I said, he's asking me, so what, are you still thinking about neurosurgery? I said, absolutely, I'm doing pediatric neurosurgery. And he's like, I don't think you're going to match. Actually, I'm pretty sure you're not going to match. So in order to do a specific specialty, or, once you get your MD, you're a doctor, but you can't really practice until you've done your training. And so, you know, if you decide to do peds, then you do 3 years of training, but everyone has to match in a program. So you interview in the program and then you rank them, they rank you, and if it's a match, then that's where you go. So it's not like you can just say, I'm going to, you know, Northwestern, and you just go. It doesn't work like that. So so he told me straight to my face, you will never match in neurosurgery. And I said, okay, all right. So I applied to 3 residency programs. I got interviews at all 3. And that was Pitt, Duke, and Northwestern. So I do remember those. And I matched at Duke. And I ended up being the first Black female to finish at that residency program. So,
Wow.
so yeah. So that was probably the most challenging.
You made history.
I made history.
At Duke. Wow.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think it was? Were your grades really low, or did they expect them to be way higher? Like, why were they discouraging you?
That's a great question. So with the MCATs, were my MCATs the highest? No. Were they the lowest? No. But they were enough that I could get into medical school. I would, if I saw the MCATs that I had, if someone brought me those MCATs, and especially the grades that I had, for sure, I would be like, absolutely apply. You'll definitely get in. But I think it was also, they hadn't seen someone that looked like me, right, applying. And, you know, so I think that's where some of the discouragement came in. And especially with neurosurgery, you know, so we have to take our step 1 and step 2 boards. And again, were my boards the highest? Did I get it perfect? No. But did I get what other neurosurgery residents have gotten? Absolutely. Were my medical school grades stellar, and my, you know, I had letters of reference and all of that? Yes, they were glowing letters of recommendation. But again, they hadn't seen someone who looks like me. And I think, you know, part of it was, gosh, she's gonna have a hard time just getting through, because it's still a good old boys, right, club, essentially. And how much is she willing to put herself through to make it through? But I did.
You wanted it very badly.
Yes.
And when you want something that badly, you won't let anything stand in your way.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
But the thing is the person on the other side of the desk did not know the depths of your desire.
Correct.
And how bad you wanted it.
Correct.
They probably assumed you just kind of going through the motions.
Yes.
This is what your parents want you to do, so you really don't want this. So
Right.
if I discourage you, you'll say, you know what, you're right. And you had to keep trucking along.
Right.
And I think that's what's so surprising to me. Because just like you said, they had never saw anyone who looked like you.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, you know, a few years ago, you're the first neurosurgeon that I've met. I've heard of it, but the first I met, and I definitely didn't expect you to be of color.
Yeah.
I was blown away. So it's still something, and I think that's why I want to do this interview, because I would like to hope that if we can get 5,000 views, 5 people will want to be a neurosurgeon, maybe 50. And if 500, then maybe 5 may make it, you know, because I want to see that happen more. And you're in the industry, are you seeing it happen more, or is it still?
Well, there's definitely more, and even more Black females that have finished and now are practicing. We actually have a Black neurosurgery group You know, it's a platform for residents, for medical students, even undergraduates, and it's definitely needed. And we even see, you know, still some of the disparities that are out there, and you know how Black residents are treated differently, how they're still discriminated against, and even with, you know, even as you get up to the physician level and the attending level, we're still seeing some of the same things. And so, you know, at this point, it's like, how do we change this? Well, we have to have a voice, and we have to, you know, have a board that has these checks and balances with our residency programs, and making sure that they're being treated fairly. They're not having these, you know, letters sent out against them for things that they didn't do. And it's, you know, it's the reality. We're actually now falling under the Congress of Neurological Surgeons.
Okay.
So
Like
yeah,
people
it's
can
one of
apply to join, or
no, you just invited. We
just
just we just invite you, and or you know, you just hear about it, and we add you to the group, and
right,
yeah.
Okay. Rushing for a sorority or fraternity?
Oh God, no,
Oh, okay.
no.
So it's
None of that. No.
Okay, I was
It's just
curious.
yeah.
So
yeah.
people can
It's
join.
just absolutely.
Undergrads, if you're in residency.
It's, right. Yes, definitely for the residents. We might have a few medical students who are part of it, but if anything, so we do different activities. We're looking, you know, we're doing different like speaking engagements and things like that where they can be a part of. And we also have webinars, and we're doing Zooms so that, you know, the attendings, such as myself, can be on there for the residents to ask questions and, you know, sort of pick our brains.
Mm-hmm. So now I want to, for the people watching, get the name of that group in case they want to go to the website, and maybe we have some residents who see this and want to join.
So it's the American Society of Black Neurosurgeons.
American Society of
Black Neurosurgeons.
And they Google that, will the website come up?
Yes, the website should come up.
So that's amazing. And you are like a pioneer in this space for neurosurgeons, because like at Duke, you made history, and that's something that we need to see more of. And you're so humble, and you're sitting here in Winter Park, and you're being quiet, and I love that about you though, because you're focused on the work. Whereas there are people who they're focused on the PR, because what you have done, what you have accomplished, you know, you could be on Good Morning America, you could be sitting down with Oprah. Like, if you really got a publicist, and if you're a publicist who you see this, we want Dr. Keyne to be one of the experts on the talk shows, and because that's what people are doing. Yeah. When I went on Tyra Banks years ago, they sat me next to a doctor who was speaking on that topic that we were discussing on the show.
Oh, wow.
And we need more representation. I know that there are Black women, neurosurgeons, Black men. You're the only one that I've seen. And I'm on social media every day. And so that shouldn't be the case. I should know by name at least 5 of you. And I seen one Black male, and that's because he went on a podcast that gets hundreds of thousands of views, and he played in the NFL.
Oh yeah.
Is it Myron Roll? Or
right, yes.
Went to Florida State, I think. So that's the only 2 that I have seen. And I say that to say, do you believe that a change is coming? Like, do you see the change? Do you believe it'll be more people who look like you going into this field of work?
I do, but I also think that we have to play a role in that. I don't think it's just going to happen. I think we have to be the ones going in the schools, showing our faces. You know, I did a few webinars with some schools I also go to different schools and speak to the middle school kids, the high school kids. And just recently, 2 weeks ago, I was in Philadelphia. One of my college friends, one of the ones that said I dragged her to the library, who's now an assistant principal of a K-8 school. And so I went and spoke to some of her girls who, I did the webinar with them, and they were like, is she real? Is she actually real? And so I just so happened to be in Maryland visiting my mom for her birthday. And so I told her, hey, I'm going to be there. It's an hour and a half drive. I'll just drive over. And, so it takes that. It takes us being that role model. And as you said, getting out of our sort of comfort zone and just thinking about ourselves. We have to think about the future. We have to think about those who are behind us, because we look at, what the people that inspired us, right? The people that we read about in the history books, who allowed us to even be where we are, allowed me to be a neurosurgeon. There's a lot of people who paved the way for me. And so it's my due diligence and my job to really do that for someone else. So yeah.
And I also want to highlight, you are a mother.
Yes.
Of 2 boys.
2 boys.
What's their ages?
Carson's 12 and Harrison is 10.
So 12 and 10.
Yeah.
And they are in sports.
Oh yeah.
So they're active.
Active.
So you're doing surgery,
Yes.
taking care of your people, and then got your 2 young men.
Yes.
And I want to touch, before we get ready to go, I want to highlight the key characteristics of your parents, once again, that help nurture you into a neurosurgeon, because it sounded totally different to me. Like, I would think a neurosurgeon, it was drilled into her, she was in like a concentration camp, like a prison sentence. But your household sounded very free-flowing, like structure and rules, but loving and kind and supportive.
Absolutely.
So tell me some of those characteristics that, if you had to pull out some of them, what would be the biggest ones that represents your household that you grew up in?
Yeah, so definitely encouraging. When I look back, it would have been easy for my dad to say, that's hard. Do you even know what that is? Do you even know how many years that's going to take? But he never did. He just smiled and said, you sure can. So being encouraging, being involved, present. As I said before, both my parents worked. We were latchkey kids, but we never felt like we were alone, or we never felt like we didn't have that family unit. We played board games at night. We made up games. We took road trips. My parents couldn't afford to take us to the Maldives or Hawaii or, plane trips, but we got in the car, and every summer we were at every amusement park, Hershey Park, Busch Gardens. There weren't a lot of channels on TV, but they let us watch TV. We watched TV as a family. We literally did everything together. I can't even recall really having a babysitter. So if my parents went over to their friend's house, we went over to their friend's house, and we all had fun. And we, of course, they would be at the table, maybe playing cards, and we would just be kids, and maybe jumping on someone's bed or whatever. But they allowed us to be kids, and they, did they make us take out the trash? Absolutely. Did we have to clean our room? Absolutely. Clean the bathroom? Absolutely. So they also, it wasn't, and so I look at it, it wasn't about the things. So it wasn't a lot of things. But if you asked me then, I thought we were the richest family in the world, and we weren't even close. But because of the love and because of the experiences, it made me feel richer than I probably ever could be in life if I hit the Powerball. because I had that. And that's something, those memories, and that's, I tell people that all the time, create those memories, because that's what we're going to remember. I don't remember the toys I got at Christmas. I honestly, I don't. But I remember every trip we took to Hershey Park and Keynes Dominion and Busch Gardens, and singing songs in the car, making up games, the alphabet game in the car, and that's what meant the world to me.
I was about to cry, so I had to pause. Being a father, and I got 2 boys, and you just added a practice for my sons tonight, because they're gonna remember the practice at the field. We don't have a theme park to go to today, but it just hit me the other day what you were saying right now, the importance of experiences. Mm-hmm. So my sons went to a soccer camp, and I came home and I said, hey boys, we're gonna get up and we're going out to the court. And they tried to, but I could tell they were so happy that their dad took out time to go outside with them.
Absolutely.
I could tell that although that while they were running, they were tired, that they loved that time.
Absolutely.
And my 8-year-old, after the next day, he said, Dad, you didn't take us back out there to that field.
Wow.
And it was because I got to see their training camp, like I picked them up, so it registered. Right. The day before, I didn't pick them up, so it didn't register that they had trained for 3 hours.
Okay.
But he asked me, hey, you didn't take us to that field. And so what you just said, just for 90% of the people watching this, you just revolutionized the household. And we need to bring that back, because they're destroying us with social media.
Oh, absolutely.
With all the games, with all of this stuff. But I'm sitting with a neurosurgeon who did not have TikTok, who did not have Snapchat, who did not have YouTube, and who didn't have, like you say, trips to these exotic islands, but you had unity.
Right.
That even a single parent can create.
Absolutely.
If it's not a 2-parent household.
Absolutely.
Can create that unity and that togetherness. So I thank you so much. And what we're gonna do, because I have a million more questions, but what we're gonna do, out of respect for the viewers, is any questions that you all have that I did not ask due to time, you could put it in the comments, and Dr. Keyne and we will compile like 10 plus questions. So the next time we have her on, we can get into those intricate details, because we're gonna have some students, some parents like, hey, what scholarships did you get? How did you write your personal essay? And something that's a little more, practical. We're gonna dive a little deeper. And so thank you so much for your time. I am honored. I am in awe, and I'm hoping that this inspires everyone the way it has inspired me.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Hey, this is Tony Gaskins. Thank you so much for watching this episode of The Study. If you haven't, make sure you hit the bell icon so that you will be notified every time I drop a video. Also, make sure you subscribe. And in the comment section, please write your biggest takeaway. And also, if you have a question, that may help us on the next episode. Thank you so much. I'll see you soon.